Howdy y'all, this is Rhett Miller from the old 97's, and you're listening to Walking the Floor.
Perfect.
I'm walking the floor over you.
Walking the floor.
I'm walking the floor. Walking the floor over you.
Hola, senors and senoritas. This is Chris Shiflett, and you are listening to another fine episode of your favorite podcast, Walking the Floor. Today's a good one. I feel like I say that every time. They're always good ones. When's it ever a bad one? Look, it's been a while since I've recorded one of these little intro things because, as you know, if you listen to the last episode with Michael Monroe, I recorded that at the same time as I did the Paul Franklin one because I was going on vacation with my family at the end of the Foo Fighter tour in Europe, which I did. It was fantastic. Went to Italy, ate my weight in pasta, watched a lot of World Cup. Who loved the World Cup? Greatest World Cup, some say, greatest World Cup ever in history. Certainly the best one in my lifetime. The best one that I've ever paid attention to. God, how much I miss it now. I'm sad. I'm in like this month-long football drought before the Premier League starts. It's a bummer. But soon. It's coming soon, and Arsenal's got like a whole new team, new coach. It's going to be a good year. I can feel it. All right, so what's been going on? I've been out doing big, crazy Foo Fighter shows. Played one last night, in fact, at Fenway here in Boston. Doing another one tonight, and then we're off to Cleveland. But along the way, I've been peppering that with some little solo acoustic gigs. Did a couple when we were in New York, out in Rockaway, at my buddy's bar, Epstein's Beach, and played out in Brooklyn at Skinny Dennis's, which was super fun, both of those gigs. And that kind of got me ready for Friday night. I got to open up for my man Rhett Miller here in Boston at City Winery. It was awesome. Rami got up, played a bunch of tunes with Rhett and with me, and then we all jammed out at the end, and it was killer. So much fun. And that's what led to this interview that I'm going to get to here in a minute today. And you know, there's a bunch more to come. I'm playing Monday night in Cleveland at Beachland Ballroom. There's 2 gigs in Chicago, playing a gig in Portland, in Seattle. I don't think we've announced that one yet, but there's one coming in Seattle. There's one going to be in Detroit, going to play in Santa Barbara in August. You should go to chrisshiflettmusic.com to get all your information about that, and there's ticket links and stuff. So it's all there on chrisshiflettmusic.com. Okay, let's talk about Zounds.com. You know Zounds.com. It's where you get all your music gear. Free shipping on every single order. No exceptions, no exclusions. Most orders arrive within 2 days. And you can get caught up on all the previous episodes of Walking the Floor on the Zounds blog. Zounds.com. And not only that, but support for Walking the Floor also comes from D'Addario. D'Addario, a fine maker of USA-made instrument strings and musical accessories, is committed to sustainability through the Playback program, recycling over 1 million used instrument strings. For more information on the Playback program and how to help in its mission of reaching 2.5 million strings in 2018, visit playback.daddario.com. All right, let's get to today's interview. All right, so like I said, I had the absolute pleasure of opening up for Rhett Miller on Friday night here in Boston at City Winery. It was a great gig. We had a blast. Got to hang a bunch before the show and just kind of shoot the shit and catch up backstage. It was really fun. Play some tunes together. Just a great night. And then I knew he was going to come last night to Fenway, so I hit him up to see if we could do a little quickie interview. That was how I sold it to him, actually. I said, hey, I want to do like a little mini interview tonight at the show. Maybe we'll just find a quiet spot backstage and go bang it out. But this turned into like, it's not so mini. It's like pretty much a full-length interview. It's a little shorter than normal, but we covered a lot of stuff. He threw down a bunch of scoops. Okay, check this out. So You probably already know Rhett Miller is like one of the most prolific songwriters in rock and roll today. He's always putting out solo records or old 97's records or whatever, but check out all this stuff he's got. He's got a new solo album coming out in October called The Messenger. He's also got a new old 97's Christmas record coming out around the holidays called Love the Holidays, and it's not just a bunch of old Christmas classics. It's original tunes, full record, old 97's Christmas record. And if that wasn't enough, he's got a book of subversive kids' poems coming out spring of next year. So the guy's got a lot on his plate and was cool enough to take the time to discuss all of it with me here backstage at Fenway. This is Rhett Miller from the old 97's on Walking the Floor. Well, first off, you're one of the elite few of repeat guests with Steve Earle, John Doe, and you.
Wow.
I think
Those are
that's it.
the two guys with a lot to say, so I will try to have a lot to say myself.
Let me thank you for last night's show, which
Thanks.
was so much fun. I don't know if you even get like how generous you are as a performer to bring me and Rami up there at the end. I mean, that was like just so much fun.
For those of you listening, last night, the night before we recorded this, Chris and I did a gig together at the City Winery in Boston. And it's funny to me, that it's something that you're like even interested in doing. Like you've got a night off between Megadome in Pittsburgh and then Fenway, 2 nights at Fenway. But it was so great, and you were so great, and the audience really loved your songs. And I
you.
feel like even just since you made that first record, you've come a long way, like as a frontman, as a sort of solo performer.
Well, I can't tell you how nice that is for you to say that, but that's what I was thinking about when I was watching you play. I was thinking about a couple things, and I always think this when I see somebody that has a lot of great records. It's like you just forget how many fucking great songs you've written, and when you see it all in one set, it's like, that's amazing. But also, you just seem super comfortable up there, just you and an acoustic guitar.
Thanks.
And I am not. I'm far from it. I mean, that's why I was like, and this gig was like kind of looming out on the horizon, so I booked like some warm-up gigs and stuff. And even like for the first half of last night, I just felt so awkward and nervous and everything. But like, how was it for you? Did you have much experience doing those sorts of gigs before you started making solo records?
When I was in high school, I was a teen folkie. So like when Red Cross came through on their Neurotica album in '86, I was the teenager playing between Peyote Cowboys and Red Cross, which
Really?
that was a great iteration of that band too, because
Yeah.
it was Roy on drums and the McDonald brothers swinging their hair, which I, to this day, every time I go and do long sweeping hair up and down hair flips, I think of the Red Cross brothers.
Oh, yeah.
But so I did that, all through high school, and then throughout my short time at college, which was one semester. But so I did a ton of solo gigs before the old 97's, and then there was about 10 years in the 97's when I didn't, and then I started around the turn of the millennium doing them again, because of Largo, you and I have
Yeah,
that in
right.
common, that old club that's now a big new club, but the old Largo room was just a little listening room, and it was such a great nurturing space, and it really got me back into performing solo, and I love it. But to your question, it's weird, like every night is a little different. I played in New York City the other night, and I had I've got a book coming out on Little Brown.
Oh,
like
right.
a book of
It's a book of poetry?
subversive kids poems.
Nice.
And it's really going to be cool. I scored Dan Santat, this great illustrator, and Little Brown's going to push it, and it's just something I didn't think I'd ever be doing, but it's super fun. But so that night in New York, I had my publicist there, and I had a bunch of my Little Brown people there, and my literary agent. And it's that kind of thing where for an hour before the show, I'm down with them talking about books, and then it kind of gets in my head a little like, oh my God, there's all these literary people here, and I'm gonna walk out.
I have to be extra witty tonight.
Or I knew I was opening with Nashville, and I'm going to go out there and sing "Who'd I Gotta Blow" to get in this fucking show. Oh, buy my kids' book,
Right.
So-
Well, you did say they were subversive kids poems. So there
Yeah,
you go.
that's beyond subversive. So that night, as I was walking out on stage, I thought, oh man, this is going to be like this is going to be one of those gigs where I'm in my head and I struggle. And it wasn't. From the minute I started the first song that night in New York, I felt so in control and so like I could do nothing wrong. And then last night we were backstage with you and Rami and me, and we were telling stories and having, a laugh. And I felt so comfortable. And I walked out on stage, and last night, for whatever reason, I got in my head, and I started thinking like, oh my God, I wonder if the majority of people here are Foo Fighter fans, and they came here to see Chris and maybe Rami, and what if they don't know who I am? And then there's this lady in the front row talking, and then my brain is going digga digga digga.
Yeah.
So like you, it was about halfway through last night's show before I kind of said, dude, shut up. You're good at what you do. Even if there's some people here that don't know, my stuff, at least maybe they'll be impressed. They'll think I'm good. They'll buy it, whatever. So I talked myself out of a weird headspace last night.
That is a funny thing. I think about that all the time, and I experience that a lot as I go out and do solo gigs and stuff, of just completely misreading the crowd. And like almost every time I'm on stage, I'm thinking, and I was doing this last night too, like just going like, oh my God, these are people that have never heard any of my songs, and even if they had, half the stuff I'm playing is off my new record that isn't even out yet, and they all hate me, and this sucks, and I'm blowing it, and all the thing, and then you get off stage, and it's like every time you're doing that, like that's when you get the biggest compliments and the most backslaps and all that sort of thing.
And they were totally into it, and it seemed like to me, but I wasn't in the room. It seemed like you were killing it, and they were going crazy after every song. And the good thing about your songs, I feel like, is that they present themselves well. You enunciate. I mean, I know that's a non-rock and roll thing to say, but people got to know what you're going to say if you're a songwriter up there by yourself. I mean, Charles Thompson, a.k.a. Frank Black, can get up on stage even at a solo acoustic gig, and maybe you don't understand what he's saying, but it doesn't matter because so much of what he does is kind of about mood and atmosphere and these crazy movements between chords and melody. But, what you and I are doing is more traditional, and it helps when people know what we're saying.
Right. God, that is good advice for young singer-songwriter dudes out there. Or I said dudes, but I meant really, anybody.
Chicks can be dudes.
Okay, tell me about your new solo record. You've made a new record. It's not out yet. When's it coming out?
God, I'm getting mixes in the mail every day from Danny Molad, who's the drummer, and Lucius. It's funny. It's one of those words I read. The band Lucius. It's a really cool young band who's also on ATO, my label. But he's the drummer for that band, and he's like an up-and-coming engineer, mixer, producer guy.
So he produced the record?
No, Sam Cohen produced the record. And Sam is originally from Houston, Texas. He lives in Brooklyn now. And Sam's been in a few different bands, kind of psychedelic bands. Sam cut his teeth. He was also a high school musician when he was starting out. He was a child prodigy, kind of like myself, although he was a rockabilly guitar player.
Oh, wow.
And to hear him tell it, and I don't want to try and quote him, but his story was coming up in the rockabilly scene. He kept liking things that hadn't been approved by the rockabillys, and they would get mad at him and go, "Oh, dude, that's so Stray Cats." And
right.
he's like, what, Stray Cats is good? And they're like, no, Stray Cats is bad, you're lame. And so he went off to Berkeley, and he's a great musician. And so he put together this rhythm section of these dudes that I really didn't know, who were just so great. And then Sam just played guitar, and it was a very fast recording. 5 days, all the tracking was done.
Really?
That's
vocals
not true.
too?
All the vocals. He
Wow.
did 3 days of overdubs in Brooklyn. But it was fast, and it's really loose, and I really, really love it. I think it's going to be called, and this is a world press release, what's it called? Exclusive.
Is this a scoop? We got a scoop?
The Messenger.
Okay.
So in keeping with my
Theme,
the instigator, the believer, the
Right.
dreamer, the interpreter.
What is the Messenger?
Traveler.
What does that relate to? Is that some lyrical theme that runs through it or something?
Yeah, it comes from a bridge in a song called Human Condition, where there were some of these songs where I kind of went back to my 14-year-old self. When I was 14, I had a real serious suicide attempt, and that was when I started kind of addressing my issues of depression and mental health. And it's not something I've talked about until recently much, but I kind of, now that I've got kids around that age, I was like, oh shit, I got to talk about this because it's over stigmatized. To be stigmatized at all is bad because it's hard enough to talk about, mental health and all that stuff. So but the record's not like about that. But I started thinking about the 14-year-old self that was in that space.
Right.
And I started thinking, like, if I was to go back and like write a letter to myself or write songs from, I just kind of put myself back into that. And
Did you write these songs like kind of in a batch?
a bunch of them did come in a batch.
Right.
And there's a few, you have, I can never put a proper concept album together, because whenever I start doing that, there's too many songs that I like that don't fit the concept, and I'm like, fuck
Right.
it. It's a halfway concept album.
Right.
But the Human Condition, it's the chorus is, you might die when you're young and you want to. You might die when you're old and you don't. You might live forever, one can only hope. And then the bridge is just, don't get mad at me, I'm just the messenger. So it's just that idea, like, it's hard to stay alive, and I wish I could go back now to my 14-year-old self and be like, dude, chill out. It's
Right.
gonna be okay.
Yeah. What if it had worked?
Oh yeah, and
You
it really should have. I mean, it was certainly, it was a cry for help, but it wasn't one of those just a cry for help. So,
Right.
Yeah, but I'm glad it didn't.
When's that coming out?
They're looking at October, so it's crazy that it's still. Remember back in the day, the major labels needed like 6 months of pre-release to get the long lead publications to line up. Now they're like, okay, just give us the record, whatever, we'll put it out. And then my son's really into Chance the Rapper, and Chance the Rapper last week was like, yo, I'm dropping a new record. Oh, you know what, guys, I'm not going to drop it this week. I'm like, okay, whatever. I guess it just doesn't matter anymore.
Right. Yeah, I keep wondering and who knows, I have an album in the can myself, and I haven't figured out how I'm putting it out or when, and keep, like, I'm still stuck in albums, but like nobody listens to them anymore. So I should probably just put out like a song at a time over the course of a year or something. You know what I mean? But one of these days.
Well, that is what the kids like. Although I do feel like, and this sort of goes to the idea that you and I both function in a world where it's kind of okay to grow old, knock
Right.
wood. Like, I really, coming up, I thought you hit 30, you got to turn in your card and go to the
Right.
old folks home, whatever.
Right.
But now I look at Willie Nelson, who's 84, and people who write songs kind of rootsy. There's an allowance made for us, so that's really nice. But I do also think that our fans are willing to ingest what we put out as it's meant to be, like
Right.
as a collection of songs.
Well, especially when you record them all together, it's not
Yeah.
like it's just a bunch of stuff from, years of recording that you sort of slap together.
Odds and sods.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I guess I'm sure it will be a full-length record.
Nice.
Everybody listening.
And there's different ways to do it. As you found out, you were on a little kind of punk rock label, and then there's the 30 Tigers route, which those guys are great, but that's
Right.
basically you've got your own record label and they
Right.
fund it, and you put together a team, and I know that's what my buddies in Turnpike Troubadours do.
Right.
And that's a great way to do it. I mean, Turnpike has, since I met Evan and became friends with them, they have been blowing up bigger and
Yeah.
bigger every year, and they own all those records and all
Really?
those masters.
Yeah, that's
and
nice.
it's just like, I wish I'd have known that. I got a lot out of my relationship with Elektra Records before the music industry collapsed.
Yeah.
I probably owe them where I am today, in as much as I've gotten success and can pull audience. But that was a messed up system. They own everything. You
Right.
sign away everything
Right.
forever. So have fun.
Yeah, and I think it's worse now, right? I mean, I live in such a bubble where, like, the record deals that Foo Fighters get through
Yeah.
a major label are not like what the just some band starting out is
Yeah.
gonna get. You know what I mean? So I always think about this. Like, I've never had to encounter the sort of ugly side of like major label land,
Yeah.
and really my only sort of hands-on experience with putting out records of my own has been through like independent labels and stuff that there's good and there's bad.
Yeah.
And whatever, but yeah, I don't know.
It's funny.
How do you do it now? Who puts your records out now?
ATO Records,
Okay.
which I like ATO because it's a really curated label. John Salter, who's the head of it, is totally hands-on, and they do it all and they own it, but they've got a good system and they've got a really good roster, and it's one of those things where there's sort of an imprimatur where people know ATO Records is going to be, they're not going to put out something crummy.
Right.
I think New West Records that we were on before is a lot like that, especially now. They've really built that label back up into something that's, everything coming out on New West is really great. Now that I think about it, that would be a great home for the record you're making right now. Talk
if
to
you're
Kim.
listening, give me a call.
Kim Bowie, call Chris Shiflett.
It seems like, it feels like you just put out, you guys just put out an old 97's record, like not that long ago, right?
Yeah, we put it out 1 year ago last month, May of last year.
So
whatever.
what's happening with
And,
old 97's
well,
right now? Are you
we
on
just
a hiatus?
No, we just finished mixing, and this is another scoop.
Wait, you've got another old 97's record and
A
it can't get out of here.
Christmas album.
Really?
Yeah, and it was pulling teeth to get my band to go along with this idea, just because they're ornery and first of all, I'm like, I think we should do a Christmas record. Oh man, I don't know. And then I'm like, and I want to write all the songs for it and make it like originals Christmas record.
Get out.
And they're
Really?
like, oh man, nobody wants to hear your Christmas songs. And I'm like, no guys, it'll be good. I promise I'll write good songs.
Yeah.
And
Then you can tour behind it every Christmas.
every Christmas.
That's a great idea.
And it's 9 originals. I wrote a few with other people. The best, I don't want to say the best. There's actually a few co-writes, but one of them is with Kevin Russell from Shiny Ribs, formerly from The Gourds, who's an brilliant Austin singer-songwriter performer. Shiny Ribs is a great band, so fun, and his songwriting's so great. But he sent this thing to me. And it took me forever to take the Kevin Russell out of it in a way, because he's got this delivery. He's like, what do you want for Christmas? And I'm like, oh my God, I can't sing like that though, but it's so fun to try.
Right.
And so it's great. But that wound up being, and here's a third scoop for Walking the Floor. The title track for the album, Love the Holidays. Old 97's Love the Holidays.
Wow, okay.
But that's the co-write with Kevin Russell, and it's the album opener.
Wow.
So
you're trying to like I think of somebody like Ryan Adams just puts out like so many records. Crazy. You're like more prolific than he is. You're like gotta be like the guy that writes more than anybody else in this business. Jesus.
But it doesn't seem like that much. It's because,
where
songs,
the hell do you find the time? That's what I want to know.
I don't know. I used to write more, I love writing songs, and the best ones happen quickly. So, and it's like these kids' poems, they happen pretty quickly. The thing that's right now my biggest obstacle is that I want so badly to write long form fiction, like to write a novel.
Oh, you mentioned last night that you have like a bunch of either
Failed
unfinished
novels.
or unpublished novels or something.
Yeah, I've written a lot of short form fiction, and I've written a lot of essays and book reviews and like memoir type pieces that I've had published in the last few years. But really, like long form fiction is my love, my first love. And I had a full scholarship to Sarah Lawrence years ago for creative writing that I abandoned that scholarship. But I've always dreamt of that as my second act. So I really want to get over the hump of writing a first draft of a novel, and I've got 7,000 words in before the self-hatred kicks in.
Right. I mean, do you ever present any of that to an editor or somebody in the literary world to bounce that off to sort of get some feedback?
I had a YA novel, which is young adult, that
Right.
I was working on, and I'm not even sure why I got drawn into that genre. What it was, I guess I was starting to do work with the suicide prevention people and thinking more about that era in my own life, and I was thinking I kind of want to address that in a young adult format. And young adult, the genre, has more rules than almost any other genre, which is weird. It's just got a lot of things you can't do and things that you really need to do to make it work. And I got pretty far down the road in that and showed it to an agent, not an editor, but an agent. And the feedback I got from that was so devastating. And I say it was so devastating, but that was how I interpreted it.
Right.
But really, probably what she meant was like, well, this is quite good, but you should think about such and such. And me, I read it as like, this is an unmitigated disaster. You should probably never write another word of fiction again. But
do you think you're going to eventually publish something?
I know I will.
Right.
I know I will. And I've,
At the very least, your own, memoir would be.
Yeah, I want to live more
Great.
before I do more of a memoir, but I've kind of gotten bits and pieces of that as I go. And I really do enjoy it when I visit that as a format. Boy, and I love David Sedaris, and nobody will ever do it as well as he does it.
Right.
I think
No,
he
he's the
takes a lot
best.
of liberties when he does it too,
Right.
but he's so good and he's so inspiring. Even when it comes to writing fiction, that voice that because that's all it is. Like any writing is just finding a voice.
Right.
I mean, I really feel like that's it with music. It took till, God, after we were done with Elektra, till I felt like I found a voice, like a real, like even not as a writer, but just as a singer, like as a singing voice that felt affected. Like that it was just me, not me trying to be me.
Right. That's interesting. I was actually listening. I went for a jog this morning around the neighborhood we're staying in, and I was just like going through listening to a bunch of your solo records and some early old 97 stuff, and it's I could totally hear like your singing voice has changed over the years, because there's a couple songs I was like, wait a minute, was that him or was that Murray? Who's doing that?
Well, I must have been stoned. The first record.
I think that was one of them that I was listening to.
For sure, and that's a song we still play every night, and it's a song I'm still so proud of. But that record came at a time when we were really coming up in a scene that was a nascent scene, this alt country scene. They just named it that. It was all my friends were, just starting. Nobody had any success, but it was really fun, and I had so much fun.
That's the wave of. That's the version of country music that was the hook for me. Yeah. That was my entry point,
Well, and we all loved X, right?
Right.
Because X was a punk rock band that they loved country music.
Right.
And we're like, oh, yeah, I love punk and country.
I mean, if you go back a little further, like X would have been it, or the Stones. I almost think the Stones is almost like my real entry point.
That Graham Parsons influenced.
But it was you guys and fucking Whiskey Town, and I kind of missed Uncle Tupelo, but like the Wilco and Sunvolt,
a little piece of ephemera. The old 97's first recording we ever made was a 3-piece before Philip joined. We went into a studio in Austin called Cedar Creek, and we got in that morning. My uncle, this crazy uncle of mine who used to be in the music industry, was managing the studio, and he was like, yeah man, this band just loaded out this morning, this band called Uncle Tupelo, and they're making some record, and it was Anodyne, which was their final record. So they loaded out their final record the morning we went in to record our very, very first demos as the old 97.
The passing of the torch.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thought, and I became friends with Tweety after that, and it's always that thing, like I tell him that story like it's going to mean so much, and he's like, oh cool.
That's funny. Don't you know how important that moment was to me? God damn it! Since we're talking about listening to a bunch of your songs, I was thinking this morning there's that song on one of your solo records called "Meteor Shower."
Yeah.
And I was thinking when I was listening to it, I was thinking about how when I first heard it, I thought the line was, "We need a shower." It took me a few listens to figure out what you were actually saying. And then I thought this morning, I was like, wait, would I be ripping that off if I took that line?
We need a shower.
It's not what it says, but I kind of like the line.
I have so many songs that start with a mishearing of a lyric and thinking, oh, that would be way cool. You just have to make the melody not sound like that song.
Yeah, that's the trick.
You're golden.
All right.
It's funny, I don't deal with rock and roll in this book of kids' poems very much.
Yeah.
But one of the poems in the book is a poem called Stinky Mouth You, and you know what, I think they might get mad at me if I do it, but I kind of don't care. It's about a rock band, and the idea is that when you're in a rock band, a lot of the life in the rock band is trying to carve out space in the van, and so like you figure out, like it's all about, especially in the early days in the van, you really want like your own bench, for instance, or eventually you get your own bunk on the bus, and these are just ways that it's so if it's all right, I would like to read a poem to you.
I love it. This is the first poem that's ever been read on my podcast, and we're doing this in lieu of a performance.
Okay.
I love it.
Yes. All right, here is the world premiere of one of the poems from my upcoming collection of subversive kids poems.
Is this a third scoop?
I think we're up to like 4 or 5.
Right, that's a lot of scoops.
Yeah, because there was a 3A and B. All right, this is a poem called Stinky Mouth You. Don't brush your teeth on a rock and roll tour. Your mouth should smell worse than a big city sewer. Your teeth should grow moss, and your tongue should grow grass, and your tonsils should slowly grow bluer and bluer. There's 8 of you stuck in a 6-person van, although if you follow my yucky mouth plan, you might even get your own bench in the back. Just make your mouth smell like an old garbage can. Gargle with garlic, floss with old socks, rinse with ranch dressing, repeat. You're building a smell that's designed to repel out of all the gross stuff that you eat. You might pay a price when the rock tour is through. Your band might do what bands have been known to do. Break up and start over the very next day, but this time they won't invite Stinky Mouth You.
Nice.
Boom.
Wonderful.
Have you ever been in the situation where somebody in the band has to leave and you break up and then reform?
I've lived that poem many times, believe you me. When's that coming out?
Spring of 2019 on Little Brown.
And are you going to do like a book tour or anything?
Oh, I'm going to do a lot of book tour.
Nice.
Yeah, I've committed. That's part of when you sign the contract for the book, they make you commit to a 2-week book tour. I'm like, can I also do solo gigs at night? Because
right.
I don't know what I'm going to do just going from, grade school to library to grade school to whatever.
They're going to let you read that stuff in schools?
I hope they don't Google me because there's just so much.
So will you be touring solo behind your new record when that comes out as well? Is that
I
all going
always
to be
do.
kind of at the same time?
Yeah, the record will come out in October. So I'm going to be, when the 97's put out the holiday record, I'll be opening those shows in November and December as a solo artist, and then the band will come out. And some of them, I think we're even going to have a really kick-ass magician in between.
Whoa.
And then, so I'll be doing the sort of supporting my solo record as an opener for the band.
Wow.
And then in the spring, I'll be doing the book touring stuff with probably some solo dates, especially on the weekends.
Nice. Well, you are continuing your reign as the most prolific, busy man in rock and roll.
Thank you very much. Remember, kids, don't brush your teeth.
That's right. That's the chief lesson learned today. Dude, thanks for coming.
Thanks so much, Chris.
Thanks for
I got nothing to lose in this town.
All right, that was Rhett Miller from the old 97's reading subversive kids poetry on Walking the Floor. How great is that? I could just talk to Rhett all day long, man. That guy is so cool and so smart and funny and just an all-around great hang. Make sure you get on over to walkingthefloor.com. I'm going to put up a bunch of links so you can check out what he's up to right at this minute because he's probably playing in a town near you right now. Get out there. Go see Rhett Miller. All right. I just got a text while I was recording this from the dude promoting the second Chicago show I'm doing next week at the Chop Shop, and he said that it's sold out, but he's going to release another 50 tickets. So get on over to my website, get your ticket for that before they're all gone. That's it for this week, kids. This has been Chris Shiflett on Walking the Floor, signing off. Adios, amigos!